Peace everyone, Zinyeza here. Thank you for visiting my channel today. I'm going to discuss the mysteries of Daath and the inward interpretation and the common outward interpretation. Let's start with the common New Age belief that this is the age of Aquarius. The zodiac sign Aquarius is the 11th zodiac, and its affirmation is I know. If you're not aware, every zodiac has an affirmation. Aries is I am, Taurus is I have, Gemini is I think, Cancer is I feel, so on and so forth. And Aquarius is I know. Now, the other phrase that people use as a substitute for the age of knowledge is the age of information. People call this the age of information primarily because of the open access that the common folk has to information that used to be very difficult to obtain awareness of, and that is due to the internet. On the internet, you can look up anything. You can ask for any book, and someone it's either purchasable online, or someone who took the time out of their life took a book and they scanned it, and now it's on the internet. Whereas I'm talking about some books are over $1,000, hundreds of dollars, rare, out of print, but someone who was under the influence of this age of information decided to share it for anyone to access it. So you can see how this is the age of information. Now, the interesting thing is the correspondence between the 11th zodiac, being Aquarius, being I know, to the subject matter of this talk, which is Daath, the 11th Sephira on the tree of life, which means knowledge. It is the 11th Sephira on the tree of life, and its Hebrew name is Daath. It translates into English as knowledge. Now, what this indicates and proves is that Aquarius and Daath have a direct correspondence to one another. Each system is dealing with cosmology. The tree of life is dealing with the origin of the universe, its process of development, and the end result. The zodiac is dealing with the same very concept. And because it's ultimately dealing with the elements. Because in the zodiac, there's 3 signs that correspond with fire. There's 3 signs that correspond with each element. Same for in the tree of life. The tetragrammaton, Yod He Vov He, each corresponds with an element. And according to each of these 4 elements, which corresponds with worlds, Sephiras are also attached to them. So, coming back, that Daath corresponds with the 11th zodiac, Aquarius, and they both refer to knowledge. We've already seen, just by me going over it briefly, that the common perspective of knowledge is merely information. So people say when someone is well learned with information, having collected a lot of bits and pieces of this happened, or this is what carbon is, and this is what an atom is, and this is what Hermes said. This is only information. And you've seen people say, wow, that's a knowledgeable person. He's very knowledgeable. He knows about things. But when it comes to spirituality, it makes no difference what you know if you are not illumined in your consciousness. You can know everything there is to know about astrophysics. You can know everything that Plato said, but Plato was considered knowledgeable, but he did not have the understanding of the inner mysteries because he was a philosopher speculating. using rationality, using logic and reason to try to comprehend the inner worlds. These are the people who use active methods to understand the inner. Basically, they're trying to understand something except from a different place than within it. It's like how the mystics say, you cannot understand God except through God. So you cannot understand God as a human. You can only understand God as a God. You cannot understand the soul with your ego. Only the soul can understand the soul. And the spirit translates the contents of the soul through its delivery of messages received in the conscious mind as spiritual illuminations. So, but that even though the understanding from the soul eventually reaches the mind, it did not come from the ego actively seeking to understand it. It was blessed with it through the spirit's work, and that comes through gnosis, which is the other aspect of Daath. The other aspect of knowledge is gnosis, which is through submitting to your spirituality, submitting to your spirit, submitting to that aspect of your consciousness that always knows what's the reality and what's not. That hunch you get, that intuitive thought you got, you didn't follow it, you found out that it was correct later. That's your spirit, and that's the spirit aspect of us that knows. Whereas the ego is the doubting Thomas. It thinks, it wonders, it speculates, it guesses, but it's not dealing in a realm of certainty, whereas the spirit is dealing with certainty. Now, so let me simplify this. On the tree of life you have Daath, a Hebrew word which translates as knowledge. It is the 11th Sephirah. It is considered to be not a Sephirah by many Kabbalists, and considered to be in actuality a gateway. A gateway into what is called the Kalipoth, which means shells. Now, what is the shell? The shell is a hard external which conceals a soft something soft within it. So like, say a pistachio, for example, it has a very hard shell, but inside of it is a very soft nut. An egg, for example, egg has a hard external exterior, but a rather soft and liquid internal. This is the secret meaning of the Kalipoth from the Gnostic point of view. I'm not doing away with the fact that the Kalipoth deals with entities. I'm dealing more so with the esoteric spiritual understanding that the veil is that the outer, which is the information, is really dealing with an inner, which is the transformation, which comes through gnosis. Because I'll give you a basic example on how information means absolutely nothing without gnosis, because gnosis is the application of information. Someone is addicted to cigarettes. They say, I know I shouldn't smoke this, but I just keep doing it. So how is it that they know they shouldn't do it, but they do it? It is because this information has not penetrated the subconscious mind, and therefore it is just words passing through the conscious mind, and it doesn't mean anything because it has no impact. Only that which is impacting the subconscious mind has meaning. It only has meaning if it's working. So when it comes to Daath, when it comes to knowledge, that which people are calling knowledge is only information, only words with no implication. But for the Gnostic, knowledge is that which is proven by experience, that which is that knowing. Knowledge is knowing through internal perception, through internal experience, and through the subsequent transformation of that perception and that experience. Another layer of understanding for Daath is sexual union. And the word knowledge has been constantly used in the past as a word for sexual union, especially from the 1800s and prior to. The word knowledge is in the Bible, in the mythology of the Bible, Adam and Eve knew one another, and they were discovered later with covering their genitals because they were aroused by the serpent to eat from the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge in this respect is dealing with the sacred orgasm from divine union. And I'll have to go into this a little bit more because I know just saying that leaves a lot to be desired as far as what does that mean. But I talked about it briefly, or I talked about it to an extent in a previous video called Intellect or Gnosis that you can check on my channel. But the basic understanding is that there's a difference between knowing and a difference between intellectually surmising. And that is one of the perils of the modern age right now, is so many people are concerned with gathering information that they're not even aware of the fact that they don't understand most of it, because people have confused their conscious mind to be their identity. Anything that was experienced in this world through the conscious mind is not the true identity. So say like people in the conscious community, you might find out that we have heritage in ancient Kemet, so now that's your identity. But that was only something that happened in a world of illusion. That has no bearing upon the inner reality of which is veiled by this entire sequence of events, which we call life, which we call time, which we call the past, which we call history, which we call society, what we call world. These are all fictions, and what they symbolize is the outer, and people are interpreting the outer as knowledge, but the Gnostic interprets the inner as knowledge, because now you're acquainted with the understanding of, and when you understand something, you are one with it. If you don't understand something, you're not one with it, you are outside of it. And it is very dangerous in this age because people aren't even aware that they don't know what they only have information about. This is a great sorrow to many of the adepts and sages. And this is why many of the secrets were always kept hidden, because they said, wow, what if people get a hold of this information and they learn to repeat it, but their actions are still governed by human impulse? This would mean that all that work that was done has been polluted by false interpretation, and therefore it's going to make the spiritual beings who are naturally inclined towards this path, is going to make their path a lot more difficult, because now they're going to have to spend a lot more of their energy towards rediscovering this information, either through heavy research or through Gnostic meditations. Whereas if motherfuckers didn't pollute this stuff, we would be able to just go into those texts that were already written and devised by enlightened Gnostics, and we wouldn't have to retrace the steps that was already done. So this is the great era of ego, and this is why Daath and Kalipov is often shied away from or told to not be dealt with, because it deals with a very dangerous situation of, can you overcome your ego? Can you overcome your intellect? that part of you that makes you think that you're making progress or think that you know something when in fact you don't know it. So it's the great battle of Horus and Set. It's the tale of two brothers. Which one are you going to go with? Ultimately, the Gnostic unifies both paths, the path of Gnosis and the path of intellect. Well, intellect is not a path for the Gnostic. The Gnostic reconciles with intellect. And because it's not about being anti-intellect, that's absurd. Intellect is the very faculty by which I'm utilizing right now to explain these concepts. Intellect is the reading of books, the studying of information, the exercising of one's ability as a scholar is an intellectual function. But this scholar might be a mystic. So the faculty by which the Gnostic is using to gain understanding of the interior world is not through his conscious mind, because the conscious mind is too volatile. So it's important to understand the difference between knowledge and information, between information and gnosis, because this will be the difference between you actually gaining access into experience of spirituality as opposed to awareness of the information concerning spirituality, but still being dominated by human thought and human impulse. So that's all I have to say today about gnosis. I want to thank you for listening. Peace.